Hey everyone, I'm Rob Design Eponymous Irving. Welcome to Design Underground episode 10. Yes, we have managed to do 10 of these and we still don't know what we're talking about. Today's special guest is Tyler Pixley.
Hi, I'm Tyler Pixley. Yes, my surname is my screen name.
We're not going to comment. We're just not going to comment. Anyhow, today we're going to talk about ship stats. Hooray! Yes, that dreaded time when we finally put up the numbers that you get to argue about for the next 8 months. Really exciting stuff. You may recall a few episodes back, you all did watch, right? That we talked about the ship roles. We have these 9 ships, and they all have a purpose, but how do we balance them? What are the numbers that drive them? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the system that we're implementing to actually make it work in the game. Are you excited about this?
I am quite excited about it. I made it. I like talking about things
You're making it. In progress.
In progress, yes. I like talking about things I'm making.
It makes it a little easier to talk about it. If you're talking about something somebody else was making, you know.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you really did bone up on all this before you wrote your tech design, that you were pretty well conversant with the whole system as we had that meeting. I like it that people read the design docs that I write sometimes.
Yeah?
I found that there's a problem with that occasionally.
I understand that I am a game programmer, not a game designer.
We're all a little bit of everything.
No, not an artist. I'm not an artist. I promise I'm not an artist.
Okay, that's true. I'm not either. I have trouble drawing circles and squares. This is
too.
very, very true.
Me too, man.
Although I have shipped art in the game before, so there you
I'm
go.
sorry.
I won't talk about what. So we're talking about the ship stats. And the important thing about the ship stats is that we started with a single goal of all 9 of the ships being fairly balanced, fairly equal. I mean, each ship is, of course, good at a specific thing, like the Augur is the best mining ship. The Wasp happens to be the second best. But each ship, even though it has a specialty, has an overall balance. You'll notice on this lovely spreadsheet, see, here's the numbers. I know somebody's going to be still screening this and putting it on the net instantly. That each of them has the same total of points. So these points are based on the number of gadgets it carries by default, the number of tools, which worth more because they're reusable, and then a number of stat points. And that's really what we're here to talk about today, is the stat points themselves. So there are 6 different categories of stats.
Yes.
6 indeed. And those categories are assigned a certain number of points for each ship. And depending on what the ship's purpose is, it'll have more or less in each category. So we have the attack category, which is how you blow things up. The defense category, which is how you keep yourself from being blown up. Also, it affects countermeasures. Speed category, so this is pure linear speed. The maneuvering category, which is all of your rotational degrees of freedom, as it were.
And linear acceleration.
And linear acceleration, yes. Excellent. And then the mining, which is its own category because mining is so important to our game. And then last but not least, the storage category. And the storage category is actually the hauling category, and this is an old version of that table. Because hauling affects not only how much of the loot you can carry from the mining portion of the game, but can also increase your magazine size or your number of countermeasures or your number of missiles.
Yes, thank you for that. That made things really, really easy for me.
Why is that?
Because I had to oh, these are listed separately, but I gotta put them together. So it just makes things a little differently organized between the design side and the programming side.
Well, that's good. I like to give you guys challenges.
Yeah. Well,
We wouldn't want it to be easy. You'd be bored.
yeah.
So each of these categories is then assigned a number of points, as you saw on the last spreadsheet, because spreadsheets are excellent visuals. Each of these categories is assigned points, and what happens is those points are then taken by each ship and parceled out into actual abilities. And each category contains any number of, from like 4 to 8 different abilities. Maneuverability is the big one because it's got all the rotational accelerations and speeds, and it's got the linear accelerations.
Yep.
I think the smallest one might be defense, but I don't remember.
I don't remember either, but that's because certain of the abilities aren't actually, or more physically represented and thus outside of like a proper stat system.
Not too important to the programmers. That's more important to the artists.
Yes.
Yes. So a ship that has 3 stars, we'll call it, in a particular category, say defense, will not necessarily be exactly equivalent to a ship that has 3 stars in the same category, because it takes those stars and adds points to specific abilities, raising them above their defaults. Every ship has a certain set of default abilities, and then the ships that are good at a specific thing have more amplified abilities in specific categories. For instance, the Typhoon uses all of its points, it's the best attack ship, in having extra guns, which it starts out with 3, so that is a big advantage, and it costs it a lot of points. And then it also uses points to give itself more starting energy, because 3 guns is going to be a little expensive to fire all the time. So that's the basics of how the system is broken down. Why don't you talk a little bit about how we're implementing this and how it ties in with power-ups and everything else?
So the stats implementation is basically broken into 2 parts. You have health, shields, and energy, which are one separate thing because they are influenced a lot more frequently, and they have separate things because, like, for example, you only have 1 rotational acceleration. That doesn't need to be kept track of, like, oh, what's the base amount of that? What's the maximum amount of that? What's the current amount of that? That's, like, you just have 1 amount of acceleration. Whereas energy, you have the amount you spawn with, you have the maximum amount you can possibly carry, and the current amount you have. So those are kept track of separately. They have their own functions that influence how much you have, like the apply damages, that applies damages to shields and then armor once the shields go down, then you have use energy, and then you have replenishment functions for all those. And then for all the other stats, they just have their basic values stored. So you have their stock value, which is the amount in each stat that each ship has out of the box. And then you have the launch amount, which takes into account the various bonuses you have from your tech trees. And then the current amount, which is influenced by whatever power-ups you may or may not have at the time. The system is built to be very robust in that it supports power-ups influencing stats that we don't have in the game design at all yet. So, like, for example, right now in the design, there is not currently a power-up that increases your rotational acceleration, but there can be. And that's really important to us to support modding in that regard.
It's all, basically the whole system is like stacking blocks, essentially, where you start with a block, and then some ships, because they're good at this, add another block on top, because they're good at it. Then you may use a tech tree on that set and add another block on top of that, and then maybe later on you'll pick up a power-up that then adds another smaller block on top of that. And it's very modular, but it's also very consistent. It's easy for all of our pieces to work together, even though they're different systems. It's just all the same concept.
Yep.
We like this nice, smooth implementation. It's gonna have a little bit of effort up front to get it there, but the end result is that it's gonna be very easy to use and extremely flexible.
Yes.
Which we appreciate.
Yeah, we definitely want maintainable code.
Rotational acceleration power-up. Let me make a note of that. We'll be getting that in immediately.
Yes.
Because can you imagine a ship going after it gets enough power-ups?
Imagine a Typhoon doing its special ability while having that power-up.
Oh God. No, I think we're gonna pass on that one, folks. All you old Descent fans, don't panic.
No one man should have that much
We're
power.
okay. So that's all we have for you today. Nice, short, tight show, but I figure there's going to be plenty to talk about when you start dissecting the numbers. Good luck with that. We'll be taking your feedback, as always, online. So once again, I'm Rob Irving.
And I'm Tyler Pixley.
And thanks for hanging around.